3 years I smiled at the people who were trying to destroy me, and when the moment finally came, I did not need to say a single word to end their careers. I joined Hargrove and Associates in the spring of 2019 as a mid-level operations analyst. It was the kind of firm where people stayed for decades, where institutional knowledge was currency and seniority was oxygen. I was 31, the youngest person on my floor by at least 8 years, and the only woman in a department of 14. I knew I would have to earn my place. I was prepared for that. What I was not prepared for was the fact that some people had already decided I would never have one. The group was 4 of them: Dale Meyerson, Carla Fitch, Rob Hannon, and Pete Sykes. Senior analysts, all tenured, all untouchable. They had been there since before the current VP took over. They ran the department's culture the way certain families run a block, not through authority, but through presence. Dale was the leader. He was charming when he wanted to be, had a dry wit and a way of making you feel like you were being let into something special when he spoke to you at the coffee machine. He remembered your birthday. He asked about your dog. That was the thing about Dale. He was not a cartoon. He was likable, and that made everything harder to fight. The first 6 months were fine. Polite. Careful. I thought I was being welcomed slowly, which made sense for a place like Hargrove. Then, around month 7, I presented a workflow optimization model to senior leadership that saved the department an estimated 40 hours per quarter. The VP loved it. My name was mentioned in a company-wide email. And that, I would come to understand, was the exact moment I became a problem. It started small. So small, I questioned myself for months before I accepted what it was. A meeting I was not invited to, even though the subject matter was mine. A message from a client that never reached me, forwarded instead to Rob, who handled it poorly and then told our manager I had dropped the ball. I found out about that one by accident. The client CC'd me on a follow-up, confused about why I had gone silent. When I brought it to Dale casually, just asking if he knew what happened, he tilted his head and said, maybe I should set up better email filters. He said it with warmth, like a mentor, like he was helping. Then came the rumors. I never knew exactly when they started or who planted which ones, but by year 2, they had taken root throughout the company. That I was difficult to work with. That I had exaggerated my credentials during hiring, that I had made a pass at a colleague at the holiday party, a complete fabrication that I only learned about when a woman from accounting mentioned it to me in the restroom, whispering it like she was doing me a favor. I stood in that bathroom stall after she left and pressed my palms flat against the door. My hands were shaking. Not from sadness, though there was sadness, from the specific, sickening helplessness of being lied about by people who know exactly what they are doing and have constructed it so that no single act is provable. That was their genius, and I need to be honest about that. They were good at this. Each incident, taken alone, was nothing. A missed email, a forgotten meeting invite, a rumor that could have come from anywhere. Carla once reorganized a shared drive and somehow lost 3 weeks of my project files. She apologized profusely. Pete gave a presentation using data I had compiled and cited it as collaborative even though I had never been consulted. Dale continued to be warm and friendly to my face while I watched my reputation erode like a coastline in a slow storm. By the end of year 2, I had been passed over for a promotion I was explicitly told I was in line for. The reason given was vague concerns about team fit. Team fit. I sat in my car in the parking garage after that conversation and did not drive for 45 minutes. There is a moment when you have been ground down long enough where something shifts. It is not dramatic. There is no soundtrack. For me, it happened on a Tuesday morning while I was brushing my teeth. I looked at myself in the mirror and realized I had been fighting this the wrong way. I had been trying to prove each incident, explain each misunderstanding, defend each rumor. I had been playing their game on their board. I rinsed my mouth, I put my toothbrush away, and I made a decision that would take another full year to pay off. I was going to stop fighting, I was going to start recording, and I was going to outlast every single one of them. I bought a small notebook, physical, not digital, nothing that could be found on a company server. Every incident went in it. Date, time, who was present, what was said, what was done, and what the likely intent was. I cross-referenced with emails I saved to a personal drive. I screenshotted Slack messages before they could be edited or deleted. I became meticulous. I became invisible. I stopped reacting to the provocations entirely, which I think confused them for a while before they decided it meant they had won. While they celebrated their quiet victory, I did something else. I started building relationships above them. Not with my direct manager, who was either complicit or oblivious, both equally useless to me. I went higher. I volunteered for cross-departmental projects that put me in rooms with directors and VPs from other divisions. I made myself useful to people who had no reason to listen to Dale's rumors because they had seen my work firsthand. I was patient, I was strategic. And I never, not once, spoke badly about my colleagues to anyone. The company announced the new director of operations position in January of the third year. It was a big role, a floor above us. Direct report to the C-suite, the kind of job that would reshape the entire department's hierarchy. I knew all four of them would want it. Dale especially. He had been positioning himself for a role like that for years. What none of them knew, what no one on our floor knew, was that the VP of Strategy, a woman named Claire Alderman, whom I had worked with on 2 cross-divisional audits, had personally recommended me for the hiring panel. Not as a candidate, as an evaluator. Claire told me I had the sharpest operational mind she had worked with in years, and she wanted my assessment of whoever applied. I said yes before she finished the sentence. The panel was 5 people: Claire, the outgoing director, the head of HR, an external consultant, and me. We reviewed applications blind at first, names redacted, credentials only. But the interview stage was face-to-face, and that was where things got interesting. Dale applied. Of course he did. So did Rob. Pete did not apply, but Carla did, which surprised me. I want to be clear about something. I did not sabotage their applications. I did not need to. What I did was far simpler and far more devastating. I was honest. What they did not know was that I had been preparing for this exact moment for 2 years, and I had brought receipts. During the panel's preliminary discussion, Claire asked each evaluator to provide context on internal candidates we had worked with. This was standard. Institutional knowledge matters in a hire like this. When Dale's name came up, I did not poison the well. I opened my notebook, I read dates, I read incidents. I presented them not as accusations, but as patterns. Patterns of communication breakdown, patterns of project attribution issues, patterns of interpersonal concerns that had been raised by multiple people over 3 years. I had names, I had timestamps, I had the email from the confused client, I had the screenshot of Carla's apology for losing my files, alongside the metadata showing the files had been manually moved, not accidentally deleted. I never raised my voice, I never said they bullied me. I framed everything as operational risk. A director, I explained, needs to foster collaboration and transparency. These patterns suggest challenges in that area that the panel should weigh against the candidate's undeniable technical strengths. I even acknowledged their strengths. I was fair. That was the part that made it airtight. The head of HR asked me to send her copies of my documentation after the meeting. She had a look on her face I recognized. The look of someone realizing a problem they should have caught years ago. Dale's interview went poorly, not because I had done anything to it, but because the panel was now asking questions designed to probe exactly the weaknesses I had mapped. They asked him about a specific project where credit attribution had been disputed. They asked about team communication protocols. They asked about the holiday party incident, not accusing, just asking him to describe the department's social culture. he fumbled. He had never been asked to defend the ecosystem he had built because no one had ever described it clearly enough to question. Rob's interview was worse. He contradicted something Dale had said about the shared drive incident, not realizing Dale had already been asked the same question. Carla withdrew her application the day before her interview and never found out if someone warned her or if she simply sensed the weather changing. The position went to an external candidate, a woman named Priya, who was excellent and who I genuinely supported, but the hiring process had cracked something open that could not be sealed shut again. HR launched a formal review of the department within 6 weeks. My documentation was requested officially. 3 other employees, people who had been too afraid or too uncertain to speak up alone, came forward once the review was announced. The pattern I had mapped was confirmed and expanded by people I had never even spoken to about it. Dale was offered a separation package and took it. Rob was reassigned to a satellite office that everyone understood was a professional graveyard. Carla left on her own before the review concluded. Pete, who had mostly been a follower, kept his job but lost every shred of influence he had ever borrowed from Dale. I watched him eat lunch alone in the cafeteria one Thursday and felt something I did not expect. A strange, hollow ache where satisfaction should have been. The new director restructured the team. I was promoted to senior analyst within 4 months. People treated me differently, though I could never quite tell how much of that was respect and how much was the particular wariness people reserve for someone they now suspect has been paying closer attention than they realized. I still have the notebook. It sits in the bottom drawer of my desk at home, underneath a stack of old tax returns. I've thought about throwing it away a dozen times. Some nights I almost convince myself it represents something I should put behind me, a version of myself that was cold enough to watch and wait for 3 years while people tried to break her. Other nights, I think it is the most honest thing I have ever written. Every page a day I chose to stay. Every entry a small act of refusing to disappear. I do not think about Dale much anymore, but when I do, I remember the way he looked at me when he was cleaning out his desk. Not angry, confused, like he still could not understand how the person he had dismissed for 3 years had been the one holding the pen the whole time.